morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I am here this beautiful Monday morning with Kabbalistic astrologer Miriam Ashkenazi, who is here to help us get a better handle not only of this week's energy, but of some really powerful changes happening around us that are going to inform our journey for quite some time. And we'll give her the mic in a minute to talk about it. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where we provide our listeners with the most powerful and practical tools to navigate the coming 7 days. We do that through the lens of Kabbalah, picking through the teachings and tools and practical wisdom that has supported its students for millennia. And inevitably, every episode offers practical wisdom and tools you can use any day of the week, any week of the year, not only this week. And this week happens to be this beautiful, perfect storm of positive changes and shifts and support from the universe. And there couldn't be a better week of 2024 to bring a Kabbalistic astrologer in to help us clue us in on how we can take even more advantage of what's going on. So I want to first show you the map, and then Miriam will help us navigate all the different things that are going on. We're already, as we've spoken for the last few weeks, we're in the month of Aquarius, and Aquarians, right? I have my PhD in Aquarius now. They are the sign that is so outside of the box, they don't even perceive the box, right? And after the month of Capricorn, that's been such a breath of fresh air. And we don't need to go too much into that because we've been talking about it so much these past few weeks. But when Miriam was here, I think it was in October, we were focusing on the new moon and the full moon, and it was such an interesting conversation. If you haven't listened to that episode, you can go back and listen to it. I think it's called Total Eclipse of the Soul. This week, what we have is the full moon in the month of Aquarius, which is also by the Kabbalistic teachings known as the new year for the vegetable kingdom, why do they need a new year? One of the interesting teachings, I think it's interesting. The Kabbalists teach that every kingdom gets its renewal of energy, right? We made a big deal a few months ago about the new moon of Libra and that it's the birthday of humanity. And we did a lot of work surrounding that and taking advantage of all the different opportunities that come with that. Imagine that the plant kingdom is having their new year. They're getting the infusion of the light and the energy and all that they're going to need to reveal their potential in the coming year. And as human beings, what we can do to tap into that, it happens on the 25th, which is, I think, Thursday this week. From Wednesday night until Thursday night, what we can draw into our own lives energetically by eating tree fruits. First of all, we have we try to eat all the different kinds of tree fruits on that day, because what we're doing is we're keeping that energy actually of the ability to grow against our nature, which is a very Aquarian gift, right? They're so against nature. They don't even want to be known as having a nature. Don't box them in. So this idea that we have this super intense infusion of energy of growing against gravity, defying the limitations that may be placed upon us. I don't think there's a single human being on the planet that couldn't use that energy right now. Coupled with the fact that the energy of this week, whether the full moon of Aquarius falls in this week or not, according to the Zohar, which is one of the main texts that we look through when we try to understand what the weekly energy is also about mind over matter, not incremental change, but drastic and dramatic change. And that's really the emphasis of this week. And Miriam will tell us a little bit more about that, is that we are given from every possible angle, from the calendar, from the weekly energy, from the planets, from every part of the system that was created to support our growth and transformation and spiritual evolution, is pushing us to drop everything that we had before and move into something completely different. Now, personally, I have to say, when I hear words like that, I do get a little nervous. I mean, I'm a Kabbalah teacher and definitely a proponent of change and transformation. And I help people do that. It's my job, whether through teaching or working with people one-on-one. And at the same time, there's a part of me that says, like, oh no, what now? Like, what else can change? So therefore, I would like to give it over to my friend, Miriam, to talk about it so that I can learn like our listeners and be able to embrace and be more, the word that makes me break out in hives, but that's also the word that helps me work through all of these changes and transitions is surrender. That I really resonate with that word a lot, because what it really means, it's like I sometimes feel myself like when I'm not embracing change, it's like trying to swim against the current. And once you surrender to the current, then you actually start to move and go with the flow and get to places you thought were even better, or get to better places than you thought were even possible. And I may have my little kicking and screaming moment, and then I surrender, and then I go with the flow, and it's beautiful. So Miriam, first of all, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for bringing me back.
And please let us share with us what's going on, and I will interrupt you as much as I can to get clarity.
Okay, thank you. Every time you invite me to come, I know what I want to talk about, but I have no idea how it's connected. Always, in so many details, so detailed to what's actually going on this week. I love how it's all connected. And what's happening, it's very, what's happening in the universe, the cosmos, we know that the planets move constantly. The moon is moving every 2.5 days. Every once in a while, we talk about Mercury in retrograde, right? It moves through the signs.
The moon moves through the signs every 2.5 days.
Exactly.
It's constantly moving,
but it
changes the signs.
Changes the signs every 2.5 days, right? Mercury, the sun does it every 29 days, every 30 days. All the planets move in their own pace. Jupiter, we talked about it maybe a little bit before. If not, we'll talk about it one time. Moves every year. But I want to talk about Pluto. So Pluto is entering a new sign. Pluto was for a long time in Capricorn. And it's interesting because Pluto is in retrograde almost half of the year. So even when it enters a new sign, there is this movement of few months being in that new sign, going back to its previous sign, going back to the new sign, that's like happening 2 or 3 times. And then it's full force in the new sign. So we have like kind of the second entrance of Pluto into Aquarius. Now, Pluto enter into Aquarius coming from Capricorn is happening on January 20th. And it's going to take place until September 1st. Then again, it's going to go back to Capricorn. And it's full force going into Aquarius for the next 18 to 19 years. Is going to be in November, but we are in this like second preparation.
The engine is revving.
The engine, exactly, in the sign of Aquarius. And this is what I wanted to highlight today, because Pluto is a planet of transformation, of truth, of demolishing, that's how you say it, everything that doesn't work for us anymore. And Aquarius is the sign of progress. Now think about Pluto being in Capricorn. I love how beautifully you put it together, that Capricorn is the sign of structure, is the sign of the traditional way, how things progress, working hard, things has to go by the rules, the status quo. So Pluto going into that before is helping us to examine what really the rules that's working for us, what doesn't work for us. Also to prepare us for a huge transformation around the things that are set, the things that are, the hierarchy, the things that are like, has to be in a certain way and so set in our mind. And Pluto represents global changes. We see what Pluto represents in the sign that he's at, with how the world behave, with events that are taking place in the world. And a lot of that has to do with that. So we know that structures are falling. Things cannot continue to be the way it is. It affects governments. It affects us financially. It affects the world as a whole, right? Humanity. Pluto is a planet of humanity, the transformation of humanity. That's why when people are born with a Pluto in a certain sign, people that are born in this 18 to 19 years has the same Pluto in the same sign, some sort of a similar process of transformation that we all go together as humanity. So now we enter into an era that Pluto is entering into Aquarius. Now, I want to be clear how slow Pluto is. Pluto takes 248 years to go through a cycle. So none of us ever experienced, we talk in astrology sometimes about Saturn return. Where does Saturn going to be again? In the same place that it was in your birth, and it has a meaning. Or Jupiter, that never happens.
No one has a Pluto return.
Exactly. No one ever.
Not yet.
Not yet. By the way, the USA have a Pluto return as a country, but that's a different topic. But I like to focus more on the personal level. So Pluto is in Aquarius, is telling us that we're going to experience from externally, but we're also required to examine it internally, a lot of unexpected changes, a lot of changes that has to do with progress. Like you just think about AI, right? What's happening with that? I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years, but we already understand that the world is going to look very different. And a lot of things that don't serve us anymore are not going to be part of our reality anymore. And we need to adapt. We need to adapt and progress with that. Also, personally, Pluto is going to show up for everyone different in their chart. So that perception of I'm progressing, I want to be a new me, I want to be more authentic, I want to really swim, right? And learn how to swim with the current and not to try to fight against it. It's going to be very clear for every individual where it is according to where Pluto in Aquarius falls in their chart for the upcoming, you can say 19 years, but specifically for our time being from now until September at least. So that's something very powerful that is taking place.
So it's almost like, even though we're in the month of Aquarius and the month of Aquarius lasts 29 days, let's say, it's really going to last in a way till September.
It is. And again, and then in November. Start again in November. So what we're discussing now, the depth of the lessons from this month specifically, the opportunities that taking place in Tu Bishvat, the 15th of the month, in the weekend of the upcoming weekend, right? The portion of Beshalach, the seed level of the transformation from Pluto into Aquarius is something that will be relevant for us to hold and to live by for the upcoming 20 years. So the lesson is for now, but it's much more than that.
Well, but that's one of the things that I find so profound about these teachings, is that we're talking about it in this week because we're ushering in this new energy, let's call it, whether it's the infusion of all these different elements that push us toward leveling up, right? Not taking with us the things that might hold us back or make it hard for us to change. And one of the things that you said, I don't know if you even noticed it, but the rules that we make up for ourselves we had an episode, I think, I don't even know, maybe August or something last year, about how we invent rules, right? That there are certain rules that the universe, the laws of the universe, that basically you can decide, I don't believe in gravity, but it's going to affect you no matter what. Those are certain rules that the Kabbalists teach. When you learn them and you work with them, you experience greater ease and joy and fulfillment. And that's one of the reasons we teach this wisdom, is because by learning these things, you're no longer swimming against the current, you're going with the flow. But the other thing that we unpacked a little bit, and I think it's a very Aquarian theme as well, is that we make up rules about how things should be. And sometimes those rules are taught to us by our families, or they're a product of the decade that we grew up in, or the country or culture that we grew up in. But we don't question those rules enough. Mm-hmm. And this is really a great week to question the rules, to really ask ourselves, with my habits, with my routine, with the way that I perceive that I enjoy things or that I like things to be, or even that I need, sometimes people say, well, I can't think with all this noise, right? That we say things like that, or I need a break, or just even if you go through, take a day this week and slow everything down and sort of observe the internal messaging system and the way that we respond to things, you will see. I wish we could transcribe the inner thoughts. That would be, I think, if AI gets to a place where we can transcribe our inner thoughts, and I feel like we could be so much more precise about our spiritual work. I think that part of the force of the opponent, the way it's so tricky, is that we're not really sure where the voice is coming from, or is it my soul, or is it my ego? But to slow down and to question, who taught me that? Where did I get that perception or compulsion or the need to do things this way or that way? And maybe if it served me when I was in high school, but it's not serving me now, and yet I'm addicted to it or committed to it, or I judge people who don't do it this way. Why? And that Aquarian energy to support us in breaking through the barriers that we don't even realize we have. That's one of the conversation that we had then. And it's funny because David is Pisces, but he's also very Aquarius, and he sometimes brings in those what are you talking about moments to the podcast. But that's the type of thing we're talking about, that you can't, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you look back on a version of yourself and you can't even believe you did those things, you thought that way, you behaved that way, you experienced life that way. It sounds to me like this is a blasting off into this new realm of nothing is the same. And it's really exciting. And I don't know if it's putting you too much on the spot, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about how Pluto affects us personally. Like if my Pluto is in, I don't know, Scorpio, what does that mean for me right now? And how am I going to...
Before I do so, I want to add to what you're saying that it's very much connected to the energy of Aquarius. But, the planet that is in Aquarius it's very different. So Pluto compels us to explore deeper, to look deeper. What do we need to change? How are things, deeply in our core, and how we gain the power from within. So connecting it to the energy of Aquarius, it's also, Aquarius has to do with all of us as humanity, all of us. How do we all progress? How am I part of creating a big change? How am I seeing things outside of the box? So this is how, it's almost like working in two forces. One go deeper, one grow higher. So we're like having those two intense forces at the same time. Now, that's what Pluto does to us in our chart as well. So everybody has Pluto located in a different house. We call it in astrology. So it's in a different area of life when we are forced or more naturally looking deeper and trying to understand how we need to create a transformation in that area. It happens to us naturally. Now, if we're not spiritual, that's why I'm saying it's a karmic planet, that's very painful. Pluto can come with pain. Pluto can come with experiences that could be very dramatic or painful if we resist the change. If we don't really accept the spiritual transformation that is involved, or that we need to awaken or to view it in that way. So Pluto in our chart and the sign that it's at will tell us that. Now, in order to investigate through the signs, I was looking at that. We cannot talk about all the signs.
But we also don't need to, right? Because if it takes 18 to 20 years.
That's why we don't need to talk about all the signs. I will be surprised if someone here is more than 100 years old.
I'm sure we have one listener.
Exactly. So if I missed you, email me, or Elisheva will give you the information. But basically, we need to talk about the signs that maybe from the 90s 30s until today. And what does it mean if you have Pluto? And in order to find out, some of you already have your chart done, so you can just take a look or Google online, or definitely if you do a chart reading, we can tell you more about that. But let's start with Pluto in Cancer. Okay, so no matter what sign you are, if you have in your chart Pluto in Cancer, and that probably for those of us that are born between the 30s to the 50s, and as I said, because Pluto goes back and forth, some of you that are born between the 30s and 50s don't have Pluto in Cancer, might have it in Leo, but so that will be the next sign, but it's transformation through emotions. It's the experiences in life has to do with understanding your emotions more deeply. How? Because that's what the sign of Cancer is about, is the water of water, is all about emotions, is fears. There's going to be, the emotional world is very strong and powerful, and the discovery, the exploration deeper is how your emotions can work for you, when your emotions are real, are not real, how you can engage emotionally in a deeper way. That's with Cancer. The next one is Pluto in Leo, and Leo, we know it's the sun, is the center of the universe. Leo has the struggle with the element of ego, and feeling self-important. In one hand, there is the person that has Pluto in Leo, in one hand probably is very powerful, and there are moments in their life when they can exercise their leadership skills, or will be in positions where am I more or am I less?
But is Pluto in Leo only for those moments between the 30s and 50s where Pluto regressed? So retrograde?
I didn't mention Pluto. Pluto in Leo's. That's why you need to look at your chart,
right? Because
it's not exact. It's not all of the people that are born between the 30s and the 50s, right? Pluto. So it's just like the sense of importance that is being examined. I heard a lot about people with Pluto in Leo that has like power struggles with siblings, for example, competitions.
And it's interesting because probably all the siblings have Pluto in Leo.
Might be, exactly. Right.
Wow.
Right. I mean, it's hard to find siblings that are 20 years apart, but it's true. Or maybe not, because maybe it's right before the transitions of the sign. But anyway, you're in your life a lot in situation when you need to deeply understand how to work on your ego, and when your ego is in place and where humility takes place. So there are deeper lessons about that. Pluto in Virgo. So we're talking about the 50s and the 70s, between the 50s and the 70s. Okay, approximately. And again, that's why it's not exact. I can't be exact with Pluto because of all the years that it's in retrograde. Some of you that are born in the 50s, you probably want to see if it's Leo or Virgo, or in the 70s. But Virgo, it's all about, if we learn a little bit about the sign, it has to do with the element of perfection. So the transformation has to do, does perfection really exist? And always this strive to do more, to be perfect. But why should I? Is this whole idea of like feeling good when I accomplish everything, or letting go and being more spontaneous. So there is like a big transformation around the concept of perfection, and a lot of letting go. So people that are born with Pluto in Virgo, it doesn't matter in which area of life, they have that potential, hopefully, this aspect to transform. And this is, again, something that is karmic. It comes up in many situations in life. Pluto in Libra. So those are between the 70s and around mid-80s. I think we have Pluto in Libra. I don't think, I know, we do have. Okay. Elisheva and me were born in the same year. So we have Pluto in Libra. But Pluto in Libra has a connection to relationship and me and others, and I can learn a lot or transform a lot through understanding how real relationship really operates, and how am I in a relationship, and boundaries, and there is a lot of process of transformation that can take place when it's to view it through relationship. How do I relate to others? So that's really Pluto in Libra. And it's interesting, again, more specific you are, where it is sitting in your chart, how it interacts with the other planets will tell you much deeper information. Pluto in Scorpio. Now, Scorpio is the sign of Pluto, so that's very intense. I think this is the millennials. I'm not exactly sure of the years, but we're talking about 84, around the 84, and the end of the 90s. And everything that has to do with Scorpio, it's learning urges, intimacy, how to look at pain, how to transform painful experiences, and learning to delve in a more spiritual way into the darkness and things that requires change. So it's intense. I would say that Pluto in Scorpio, it's intense. Let's move on. So Pluto in Sagittarius. So we're talking about the mid-90s until probably 2008. And Sagittarius is all about justice and purpose. So it's also all revolving around that idea or thing, what is justice? And also revolving around the idea of lies or being truthful. And what do I need to do in order to fulfill my purpose? And there is always transformations around that. Also, Sagittarius is the greatest learner or teacher. So people with Pluto in Sagittarius maybe can learn a lot through the process of teaching others, can transform a lot, or being a constant student. Like there is this whole process of like constantly teaching and studying. And then the last one, which is Pluto in Capricorn. I mean, there are some babies probably born with Pluto in Aquarius already, because we did have a little bit of time of Pluto in Aquarius. But for those of us, I'm sure they're not listening to the show. So but
their parents are.
Yes, that's true. But Pluto in Capricorn. So we already said, right, Capricorn is also very much goal-oriented, and it's about accomplishment and success. And this is the area, Pluto in Capricorn, the individuals that has Pluto in Capricorn in their chart will explore through transformation and deeper understanding around what are my goals? What am I here to accomplish? Is it a real accomplishment? What is success means to me? What do I really want? And how do I walk through this life being successful, but also connected to others? How am I succeeding and I'm not happy? Is that real success? Like they'll have a lot of those deeper questions and experiences that they'll explore deeply into the idea of goals and accomplishments. Yeah. So this is really what's happening among those of us who live today.
Yeah, I think for anybody who looks at the universe or life as random and coincidental, and that nothing is connected, or that there isn't that unifying force. And to me, I'm sure we have listeners who are on a spiritual path that maybe haven't explored the wisdom of Kabbalah yet, and don't necessarily see the full picture yet. But what's interesting for me is that there are people out there who don't see the connections, or that don't see the harmony or the divine plan underneath everything that's going on. You mentioned before that the certain, I guess if you have Pluto in Scorpio, so it can be, I think that was the one that can be painful, the transformation, and that there's so many people out there for whom every little change or disappointment or surprise is painful. And that it's painful to me to see people I know who resist the encouragement of the universe. And so I feel like part of our work for those of us who are on a spiritual path this week is also to think about, to meditate for, to send energy to those people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, not the Aquarians, not the going with the flow, unwilling to surrender, don't see the perfection. What's interesting, and maybe we'll get to it in the next few weeks, is each one of us has our own personal 72 name according to when we were born. The 72 names of God is something that it's a tool that we have that was revealed actually in this week. And that's one of the reasons it's so, one of the extra boosts of energy we get this week comes from that, the origin of that tool in this week's energy. And my personal 72 name is Design Beneath Disorder. And I always felt like that's my strength and that's my weakness. That when it comes to personal stuff, it's always hard for me to, like, if I'm going through something difficult, I don't necessarily see the silver lining immediately, that it's my work. Part of my work is to uncover it. But outside of myself, I see it very quickly. I can help solve the problem, find the solution, look for the missing piece of the puzzle, that's a gift I have. And then it's also my Achilles heel when it comes to me personally. So I feel like this is the week in which we can also tap into, strengthening our gifts and better learning our weaknesses so that we can really rise above. We're not meant to be, whether we're talking about astrology or challenges, we're not meant to be defined by them. We learn about it so that we can work with those influences and rise above the ones that are inhibiting or hindering us. So I feel like that's a big part of what you shared with us and what we can take from this week and this new Pluto and Aquarius era that we're entering.
I think the right way, I always like to summarize it in a word. I think the word impossible should be out of the way. That's one thing we're going to reveal, that there is no impossible. Things are much more possible. The unimaginable is possible, especially like you're saying, for those of us that maybe more naturally live within the limitation or inside the box, and it's hard for us to imagine a reality where we're capable, or things that seems to be so challenging can happen. I mean, that's like pushing the boundaries. That's the outside of the box of Aquarius. And that's also the process of the transformation of Pluto. So there is no impossible. And we need to keep that as a daily mantra for things that comes our way or things we want to do, dreams to accomplish. That's really what it is.
And this is the week for that. This is the week to identify whatever you've written off as impossible, resign to the fact that it just can't happen, or that there is no solution, or I just need to face that it's going to always be this way. The light force of the Creator is really shining on those things this week to give us a new way to look at it, a new way to deal with it, a new way to handle. We just have to be open to it, that there is a better reality if we just surrender and open ourselves to it. So thank you, Miriam, for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you again. Always happy to be here.
Yeah. So if you are interested in learning more and connecting with Miriam, we have a special listener discount that you can get in both the show notes and at weeklyenergyboost.com. It is for a limited time though, so do not delay. Last time Miriam was on, we had a lot of people that heard the episode outside of the offer, and it is a limited time, so don't delay. You can also go to weeklyenergyboost.com to donate and support our podcast to help continue to make it happen. You can find Weekly Energy Boost on all podcast platforms, as well as YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you go to weeklyenergyboost.com, you can meet Miriam, get to know her a little bit better, as well as all the things we've been talking about in these last few weeks in our episodes, connecting with our guests and learning more about what we think is important for our listeners to know. And we'll be back next week talking about more exciting, box-breaking opportunities that this month and next week will afford us. Again, Miriam, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week on the Weekly Energy Boost.